Isn't it curious that in a world where artificial intelligence can compose symphonies, where our rovers roam the surface of Mars, and where our deepest data can be stored in strands of synthetic DNA, we still find ourselves staring at the full moon with an unease we cannot explain? That despite centuries of science, technology, and enlightenment, something about the full moon still whispers to the ancient parts of us, the parts unmeasured by progress, the parts still ruled by rhythm, water, light, and shadow. And perhaps the most paradoxical of all, in this age of ultimate knowing, we are still susceptible to what we cannot see, to forces that do not announce themselves with sound or logic, but operate in the stillness between explanation and emotion. The moon, a rock without its own light, suspended in space, has no atmosphere, no sound, no signal, and yet it pulls entire oceans across the globe with every breath it takes. What else might it be pulling subtly, invisibly in us? Now, this isn't superstition dressed in science. This is the recognition that for all our mastery of the observable, we are still under the governance of forces more ancient than our language. The full moon affects tides not in myth, but in fact. And since human beings are largely composed of water, it stands to reason that we too are participants in this gravitational choreography. Not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And every so often, a specific full moon like the one on April 23 seems to stir the collective soul a bit more deeply. You feel it in the insomnia statistics, in the uptick of emergency room visits, in the conflict that emerges more easily in homes and streets and hearts. You feel it in yourself, restless, charged, uncertain. It's not chaos, it's resonance. And ignoring that resonance would be like ignoring the wind because you cannot see it. So what does the full moon actually do? Not in magical terms, but in behavioral ones. It illuminates not just the sky, but the self. Under its light, boundaries blur, emotions intensify. What is unresolved surfaces, and in that spotlight, many act without the cloak of discretion. They begin new ventures in haste. They make impulsive decisions without clarity. They abandon self-care, override their own boundaries, and reach for dark, quick solutions to long, slow problems. Not because the moon controls them like a puppet master, but because the moon heightens what is already there. It's not an outside force, it's an amplifier. And when an amplifier is placed next to a dissonant instrument, the noise is unbearable. During a full moon, you might feel an increased sense of urgency or heightened emotions. This can lead to impulsive decisions, which, from a scientific perspective, can be counterproductive. Neuroscience tells us that our ability to think clearly can be compromised under stress, and the amplified energy of a full moon can cause us to act without sufficient consideration. It's a time to pause, reflect, and give our decisions the space they need to be made with clarity. The full moon is a time of culmination, not initiation. The wave has already risen. The pull is strongest. It is a time to observe, not act, to review, not to launch. It's like planting seeds in a hurricane misguided, at best, destructive at worst. That doesn't mean the moon is against you. It simply means it's honest with you. Its gravitational field is a teacher of timing. Its cycles are a syllabus in patience. And it's not just ventures you must be careful with. It's behavior. There's a reason folklore links the full moon with madness, with shape-shifting, with sudden violence or wild impulse. No, people don't grow fur and howl at the sky. But we do become more reactive. The veil of rationality thins. The margin between feeling and action collapses. And in that fragile space, people break things, relationships, trust, plans, not because they are weak, but because they are unaware of the tidal forces within them. Awareness changes everything. It's the lighthouse on a stormy shore. You don't stop the waves, you navigate them. That's what this moon asks of you. It also asks you to care for yourself. Because when everything around you seems charged, your emotions, your dreams, your sleep, you need an anchor. That anchor is not productivity, it's not achievement, it's not caffeine, it's care. Self-care during a full moon is not indulgence, it's survival. It's a recalibration of the nervous system in a time of cosmic overstimulation. It is quiet resistance against the temptation to overreact, overwork, or override your own needs. It's sleep, it's breath, it's boundaries, it's ritual. Not ritual as superstition, but as a structured return to sanity, as something to hold on to when the tides are high. And boundaries during the full moon are more sacred than ever, because light exposes, and when everything is exposed, you must be vigilant about what you allow in. This is not the time to say yes to everything. This is the time to say yes only to what feeds clarity, only to what honors peace. During the full moon, emotional boundaries blur. People project, people absorb, people assume. You must become a guardian at the gate of your own energy, protecting your time, your mind, your space, not out of fear, but out of respect. Not because you are fragile, but because you are finite. The moon reveals that finitude in bright contrast and asks you to respond with wisdom. And finally, perhaps most importantly, this is not the time for darkness in intention. Performing rituals or actions that stem from revenge, harm, or manipulation during a full moon is not only ethically troubling, it is cosmically unwise. The moon doesn't have the power to judge the energy we send out, but it does play a part in how we feel the effects of those energies. Just like a powerful telescope amplifies the faintest light in the universe, the moon magnifies whatever emotions or actions are already present in us. And much like the scientific principle of cause and effect, what we put into the world tends to come back to us, whether we intend it or not. So act with purity, with compassion, with clarity. Use the full moon not as a portal for domination or control, but as a mirror to purify your motives. Let your rituals, if any, be of healing, of forgiveness, of release, of illumination. The same way the moon does not generate its own light, but reflects the sunlight. Your actions reflect a light beyond ego. The full moon is not a villain, nor is it a god. It is a clock, a mirror, a tide, a question, a teacher. And like all great teachers, it doesn't give you answers. It gives you conditions under which your own truth is revealed. April 23 is no exception. It is a moment in time that invites you to listen to yourself, to your patterns, to the pull of nature that has been trying to teach you harmony since the beginning of your species. It is an opportunity not to fear the night, but to understand why you shine more clearly when it's dark. And so we continue deeper into the gravitational pull, not only of the moon itself, but of the human mind shaped subtly by the rhythms we rarely acknowledge. For all our brilliant solar quantum computers, our genetic engineering, our interstellar ambitions, we still live under the dominion of cycles, solar cycles, lunar phases, circadian rhythms. The moon is not an external event. It is a constant participant in our biology, our psychology, and our stories. When it becomes full, it is not performing for the cosmos. It is reminding us that light, when intensified, exposes both beauty and imbalance. During a full moon, what is hidden becomes illuminated, not just in the forest or on the water's surface, but in you, your restlessness, your regrets, your unspoken truths. The arguments you keep rehearsing in your head, the dreams you've deferred, the anger you've justified, all of it comes to the surface not because the moon causes it, but because its light no longer lets you pretend it's not there. And this is precisely why acting impulsively under a full moon can be so destructive. When we are overwhelmed by what we feel but haven't processed, we tend to act not with intention, but with urgency. And urgency is rarely wise. Think of the moon like a magnifying glass held over your emotional blueprint. Whatever patterns are therein, unexamined, will now be magnified. The way you lash out when feeling unappreciated, the way you shrink when confronted, the way you chase connection without asking if it's real. These aren't moral failings, they are gravitational vulnerabilities. And knowing them, observing them, is not weakness, it is sovereignty. It is becoming the scientist of your own soul. The moon doesn't ask you to be perfect, it asks you to be aware. And awareness leads to discipline. A full moon is a test of your inner maturity. Will you honor the emotional charge without letting it dictate your every move? Will you feel deeply without needing to react outwardly? Will you observe the surge in energy without attaching to its narrative? These are not easy tasks. They are acts of self-leadership. And like all real leadership, they don't show up in grand declarations, but in the quiet decisions made when no one else is watching. Do you go to sleep when your mind wants to spiral? Do you pause before responding to that message? Do you choose breath over blame, stillness over spectacle? This is why self-care is not optional during a full moon. It is structural integrity. You are not fighting the moon's energy, you are integrating it. You are saying, I will feel all of this and still choose peace. I will acknowledge the pull, but steer my ship. This is where meditation becomes not a trend, but a necessity. This is where sleep becomes not laziness, but recalibration. This is where your diet, your hydration, your silence, your boundaries are no longer luxuries, they are your shield. Not because the moon is dangerous, but because you are powerful and power must be grounded or it becomes explosive. Now imagine for a moment the Earth without its moon. The tides would cease. The seasons would destabilize. The axial tilt of our planet would wobble wildly over time, making long-term climate cycles chaotic. Life as we know it, at least life in its organized pattern form, would unravel. That is the role of the moon. It doesn't just light the night. It keeps Earth sane. It keeps Earth predictable, structured, habitable, and perhaps that's the deeper metaphor. The full moon is not chaos. It is structure under maximum exposure. It is order revealed so intensely that it overwhelms. And it is up to you whether that overwhelm becomes a breakthrough or a breakdown. So as we inch closer to April 23, remember this. Don't begin what you haven't finished processing. Don't sprint into a field of illumination without knowing where you stand. Don't mistake momentum for clarity. The new venture can wait. The honest conversation must wait. The signature on that deal, the leap into that new commitment, the confrontation you've been craving, let it wait. The full moon doesn't say no. It says not yet, because it wants what begins in you to be strong enough to survive the darkness that always follows the light. And if you do feel compelled to act, ask yourself this: am I reacting to the world or responding to my truth? These are not the same. One is emotional gravity, the other is conscious flight. The moon affects both, but your awareness decides which one you follow. Instead of seeing the full moon as some sort of mystical force, let's understand it as part of the cosmic system we live in. The moon doesn't judge or punish it, simply reflects the energies we already put out. Think of it like a mirror, amplifying the truth of our actions, thoughts, and emotions. If you're sending out energy based on negative impulses, that's the energy you're going to feel most strongly. But just as the moon doesn't create its own light, you have the power to direct the energy you reflect. If you curse, you will feel cursed. If you manipulate, you will feel twisted. If you seek revenge, you will create a spiral of retribution. Not because the cosmos is angry, but because it is reflective. The moon is a cosmic mirror. It does not judge your light. It simply returns it. So be careful what you emit. And while we're speaking of boundaries, we must talk about human relationships. The full moon is not just a test of your inner self, it is a test of your emotional intelligence. The line between your feelings and someone else's becomes thinner now. Projection runs high. People argue over shadows. They take offense at things not said. They confuse their pain for your intentions, and vice versa. That's why this is not the time to test the resilience of your closest relationships. It is the time to reinforce them with kindness, with listening, with space. Give people the benefit of the doubt. Give yourself space to pause before drawing conclusions. Conflict born in heightened states rarely ends in truth, but compassion born in the same state often creates healing far beyond words. In a way, the full moon is the great revealer. It shows us where we are not yet healed. It exposes what we are still carrying. It lights up the corners of our psyche we would rather keep dim. But that is not cruelty. That is invitation. The moon says, you cannot change what you refuse to look at. And once you do, truly look not with judgment, but with honest Tyson, and only then can you transform. April 23 is just another night on the calendar, but the moon makes it more. It takes the ordinary and stretches it into myth. And while it may not ask you to howl or dance or cast spells, it does ask you to participate in your own becoming. Not through noise, but through reflection. Not through frenzy, but through presence. So if there is one thing you remember when that moon rises and casts its cold, ancient light upon your world, it is this. Do not do anything that pulls you out of alignment with your highest self. Do not chase. Do not force. Do not erupt. Instead, observe, recenter, reclaim. Let the moon teach you how to risen on through domination, but through gravity, through rhythm, through reflection. Let it remind you that you are part of something older, wider, more intelligent than anything your ego could engineer. And in that remembrance, find your peace. And as the night progresses, as the moon reaches its zenith and floods your room with that eerie silver glow, it becomes harder to escape the realization that you are not just observing the moon. You are, in some sense, being observed by it. Not in a supernatural sense, but in a psychological one. It sees you, it reflects you. The fullness of the moon demands the fullness of your awareness, and what it reflects is not your appearance, but your alignment. Are you living in accordance with the cycles of your own mind? Or are you moving chaotically through time, resisting every natural pause, every moment meant for reflection, every rhythm that might save you if you listen? The full moon is not the climax of chaos. It is the climax of clarity. But clarity is uncomfortable when you've been surviving on illusions. That's why so many people find themselves unraveling during this phase and on. Because the world is cruel, but because their unresolved truths are louder now, harder to repress, impossible to ignore. The relationship that's been draining you, you feel it more now? The project you're forcing, it resists you harder now? The version of yourself you've been pretending to be, it collapses more quickly now. Because the full moon calls everything into question, not to punish you, but to redirect you. It's important to recognize that intensity doesn't necessarily equal insight. The heightened energy of the full moon might feel like a surge of understanding or urgency, but from a psychological standpoint, it can simply be the brain's response to elevated emotions. Our neural responses to stress and excitement are often misinterpreted as clarity, but they can actually cloud our judgment. Sometimes it's trauma speaking louder. Sometimes it's stress dressed as spiritual clarity. Sometimes it's the part of you that wants relief, not growth, taking the wheel. The full moon doesn't give you answer sit, gives you a microphone. And the question is, which part of you is speaking into it? If it's your fear, you'll feel compelled to act recklessly, to reach out to people you should be releasing, to start battles you'll later regret. If it's your ego, you'll feel provoked to perform, to prove, to push your will onto the world. But if it's your higher self, if it's the calm presence behind all the noise, then you'll feel a different kind of urgency. The urgency to slow down, to say no, to rest, to stop pretending, to become honest. That's the true power of the full moon. It turns your emotional body into a mirror. And if you're brave enough to look into it without reacting, you just might see something that changes your trajectory forever. Nowhere is this more important than in the realm of starting something new. Most people think of beginnings as hopeful, fresh, filled with promise. But a beginning made under pressure is not a beginning, it's a disguised escape. And the full moon tempts many into false beginnings. New jobs, new relationships, new plans launched, not from vision, but from desperation. But beginnings are sacred. They require soil, not spotlight. Quiet, not chaos. The full moon is not soil. It is a floodlight. It is meant for culmination, for ending, for acknowledging the fruiter, the failure of what has already been planted. If you start something new during this energy, you will likely find it built on unstable ground. It may appear promising at first, it may feel exhilarating, but that's often the seduction of heightened lunar emotion, not sustainable truth. What's more powerful than starting something under the full moon is ending something consciously, closing the chapter, walking away with dignity, saying goodbye to the things you kept alive out of habit, letting go of the goals that no longer resonate, surrendering the identities you've outgrown. These actions are not glamorous, but they are what makes space for real, aligned beginnings, later when the moon wanes, when clarity settles. when your nervous system has steadied. It is here that we touch on the deeper physics of cycles. Everything in the cosmos moves in waves energy, light, time, even human thought. To act wisely is to respect the wave. To resist acting when the wave is peaking is not hesitation, it is timing. Even the most advanced science on Earth, from rocket launches to neurological research, respects timing. Surgeons know that precision is useless without the right moment. Astronauts wait for windows. Why should your soul be any different? And then there's the question of darkness. Not cosmic darkness, the kind between stars, but human darkness, the kind we direct outward when we feel powerless. The kind we try to weaponize through control, through manipulation, through so-called rituals performed under the full moon in the hope of bending reality to our will. You don't need to believe in magic to understand that energy is not neutral. Every intention is a vector, every action a ripple. The full moon doesn't give you more power, it magnifies the power you already carry. So if your heart is clouded with resentment, your actions will carry that frequency. If your motives are impure, the moon won't protect you. It will expose you. And the results may not be what you expect. Across ancient traditions, it's not the rituals themselves that were feared, but the misuse of them. The unwise invocation, the misaligned spell, the ego disguised as purpose. These were always the most dangerous forces, not the moon, but the human wielding it without self-awareness. Today, those rituals may look different. They may be emotional manipulations, social media call-outs, calculated silence used to punish, words designed to shame. They may be contracts signed in desperation, promises made to maintain illusion, sudden ghostings to avoid hard truths. We have dressed our modern darkness in civility, but it is no less real. And the moon, always watching, always mirroring, gives it nowhere to hide. So the wisdom of the ages remains. Do not direct harm, especially under the full moon. Not because karma is a mystical force, but because energy is a boomerang with perfect memory. And during this time, it travels faster. Instead, if you must perform a ritual, let it be one of release. Light a candle not to cast spells on others, but to remember the parts of you ready to be dissolved. Write letters you'll never send. Speak forgiveness aloud, even if the person you're forgiving will never hear it. Walk into the night not to conquer it, but to feel how small and held you are in this vast turning sky. These are not weak acts. They are the greatest forms of power we know. To face yourself in the light of the full moon and not flinch, that is courage. To feel the pull and still remain centered, that is evolution. To know you could react, but choose peace, that is mastery. And that is what the moon asks of us. Not fear, not worship, not superstition, just presence, just humility, just the willingness to participate in this dance between celestial bodies and emotional truths with your eyes open and your feet grounded. You don't need to understand every gravitational formula or lunar metric to know this truth, that when the moon is full, you are being invited to become full too, not full of noise, but of awareness, not full of action, but of alignment, not full of judgment, but of reflection. And in that fullness, to make the simple, radical decision to do nothing that betrays your center. That is how you survive a full moon. That is how you let it sharpen you, not shake you. That is how you let it teach you, not with fear, but with force. And the lesson always is the same. Nothing external can control you. Not the moon, not other people, not old stories if you have learned to govern your inner tides. The moon rises, the moon falls. But you, if you're paying attention, grow steady. So now we return to the beginning, the question unspoken, the paradox left hanging in the night air, like the moon itself. In a world defined by our ability to harness matter, measure time, and decode the atom, why do we still behave differently when the full moon rises? The answer, perhaps, is not found in hard data, but in the soft spaces where science meets story, where astronomy touches anthropology, where observation becomes awe. The full moon is not a superstition clinging to the past. It is a symbol of the inescapable rhythm we were born into. Its gravitational pull may be invisible, but its metaphor is undeniable. It shows us what happens when something that is usually hidden becomes fully seen. And what do you do when all is exposed? When your restlessness, your longing, your deepest fears rise like ocean tides, you don't fight the moon, you don't curse the sky, you don't run into the storm of your emotions and call it fate. You breathe, you wait, you listen, you realize that your timing matters, that beginnings require stillness, that not every feeling deserves a reaction, that sometimes doing nothing is the highest form of power, that clarity doesn't come from intensity, but from perspective. And most of all, that the moon's power is not in what it does to you, but in what it reveals within you. So on April 23, when the full moon rises over your city, your village, your quiet window, don't just look at it. Let it look at you. Let it be a mirror, not a mystery. Let it teach you not what to fear, but when to pause, and how to move with your own tides instead of against them. Don't start what isn't ready. Don't confuse urgency for truth. Don't trade your long-term alignment for short-term relief. Instead, treat this moon as a checkpointed gravitational echo from the sky asking, are you acting from clarity or are you reacting from chaos? The moon will not give you the answer, but it will give you the silence in which to hear it. And perhaps that's the greatest gift of all. In a universe that expands at the speed of light, where stars are born and die in majestic silence, here is a cold, cratered sphere orbiting you every 27.3 days, reminding you to cycle, to reflect, to release. The full moon does not want to control you. It wants you to remember that you are made of the same elements that burn in stars, flow in oceans, and spin in galaxies. You are not separate from the cosmos. You are the cosmos becoming aware of itself. So do not fear this moon, but do not underestimate it either. Respect the wave, respect the timing, respect your own power, and above all, though, not act out of alignment on a night designed for insight, because the universe is not punishing you. It's inviting you to pay attention. April 23. Let the light reveal. Let the chaos pass. Let the stillness speak. And in that quiet, choose wisely